Isaiah's ministering in urban government centered areas. So Isaiah's taking mass transit to work, wearing Armani's, carrying a fossil messenger bag, so he can tote his, iPad back and forth. Amos, man, Amos, when it's, Sabbath, Amos is pulling out his nice overalls for church. Amos got dirt under his fingernails. He's not wearing Armani. His Armani would be turned into oil rags by now. And you just see the difference in the personalities. I mean, Amos talking about the baskets of fruit, plumb lines and stuff. Isaiah contains some of the most politically charged vocabulary in the Bible. And he writes with the polish and the refinement of the type of person who would be working in the government as he indicts Israel's king. So that's his thing. So it's interesting to see how much personality comes out even between the biblical writers. When you have the, like the Obadiah and Nahum-like material where foreign nations are being denounced, excuse me, the important thing about that is to remember that it's not just preaching against people who aren't there. It's doing so for the encouragement of God's people, reminding them that God is in control and that God will bring about his justice. And so the prophets, sometimes they in those judgment oracles, they can sound like some preachers do in preaching to people who aren't even there. By, just standing up and, I don't know, preaching against Miley or something. You just kind of go, she's not even here, man. What are you doing? There's a difference between using something as an illustration and just ranting and raving on people who aren't even there. And sometimes the prophets feel a little bit that way, but what you got to remember is they're not just ranting and raving on people who aren't there. They are reminding the people of God, this is God's view on this matter, and God's going to take care of this. So it's an encouragement to marginalized and mistreated people that God is. It's just bringing them hope and encouragement, the ability and the resolve to hang in there. Questions you have about preaching from the prophets? Let me recommend a couple of resources, because we don't get to spend very much time on this. One, Ward and Ward, W-A-R-D, James and Christine. James Ward and Christine Ward. Preaching from the Prophets. I know, exciting title. Gary V. Smith taught Old Testament for a long time at Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Kansas City. The Prophets as Preachers. And also Elizabeth Achtemeyer, A-C-H-T, A-C-H-T, E, M-E-I-E-R. Elizabeth Achtemeyer has also done a lot of work, especially on preaching from the Book of the 12, the Minor Prophets. And I mentioned her the first week because she's the lady that says you can't preach from an Old Testament scripture without pairing it with a New Testament text. And I kind of disagreed with that. But while I disagreed with that, and would disagree with her insistence on that when preaching from the 12, nevertheless, she's got a lot of helpful information about preaching from the prophets and some of her work. So you might just bear that in mind. I don't have a specific, although she's got a book called Preaching from the Minor Prophets. But she's also done some broader work that way. So those might be some helpful resources to you. 5 minutes until we break. What questions do you want to ask me over the next 5 minutes about preaching from the Minor Prophets? Some of the shorter ones you can do as sort of a book sermon. I like doing the ones that are shorter that way. Again, because it's often really more a single speech event. Something like Malachi gets a little more complicated. It divides into 6 sections. You could do it in 6 sermons, but it's just 4 chapters, so you could probably do it as one. Either one could be appropriate. Because the prophets communicate so much in speeches, really try to structure around those speeches when present. So the unit of thought is often the oracle itself. You don't want to just jump in the middle of a speech and preach point 3 without preaching points 1 and 2. And that does happen sometimes, especially in those lawsuits, those Reeve oracles. What are you wondering about? Is it because I've been so thorough? Because the day is so long? Because
with the larger prophets, I heard a guy say that he sort of did through the bigger themes because there's so much material. And he said something about the Jeremiah and his stuff was like one of the pottery.
yeah.
And he said that he was just so big, and he goes, I could burn out myself with it if it was a little on my audience. So I just did that theme through sometimes the books when they're bigger, because you'll lose the audience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. So it would take a lot for me to do longer than a 13-week series these days.
Yeah.
And much of what I would do would be shorter than that. But it depends on your audience.
Yeah. Then you say that because you're in more of a traditional, they're.
I can get away with more.
Yeah. I can see.
But I don't really advertise, hey, we're still in the Gospel of Mark. Now, I connect it all up, but I try to make each sermon stand alone
Sure.
well enough to where it doesn't feel like we've been in there forever.
Yeah.
Some of it's in the marketing, honestly.
Yeah.
But some passages are just a harder sell than others, and we're gonna spend a year in Jeremiah. You just got a tough sell from the start. And I have to acknowledge that there's a difference between what I read and benefit from my spiritual nurture, what I might encourage a group of future preachers to journey through together formatively, and what I'm going to stand up and do a lengthy sermon series on. I mean, not everything that's spiritually beneficial do I do a lengthy sermon series. And so my approach to Jeremiah would be similar to what you're describing. I would do a shorter series that would connect up themes rather than a detailed, lengthy series. It's 12 o'clock. So, let me just ask you an honest question here. We're going to come back, we're going to start into the gospel stuff. We are meeting today until 3 o'clock. We are breaking right now for lunch. What I need to decide is how long a break we're going to take. And that's where I need your help. How long of a break do you need to really be able to lock in well and go until 3 o'clock? Let me start with the low number and figure out if it'll work. If we break for 30 minutes, can you go for 2.5?
I can.
If not, if we break for 45, can you go for 2 and 15 with one break in the middle? Realize if we take a full hour break, man, I've got to crank the last 2 hours.
If it was 45 with a break in the middle, I think that'd be probably.
And again, I want you to be honest with me, because there's no point in pretending here. I mean, if I'm gonna lose you, I mean, that's not what I'm about. I want this to be productive. So you think 45?
Yes, sir.
Does everybody think 45 can more or less get us? You hear me being flexible, don't you? Don't you appreciate that? That I'm being flexible instead of just telling you how it's going to be. The fact that I'm working with you to help us figure out, what we need. And what does that make you think? What does that make you think? You think to yourself, he is on my side. He wants this to be a positive and productive experience for me. I can't wait until the evaluation opportunity comes up at the end of this semester, because I can't wait. I can't wait to express just how good I feel about this time that we have spent together. Do I even need to fill out the evaluation form, or can I just send a bouquet of fragrance? Y'all take a break. I'll see you in 45 minutes.
If you can sit in the temporary, I was just saying, like, that's important.